Karas is set in a world where fey creatures are faced with extinction, as modern humans have stopped believing in them. It's a somber story that explores spirituality in the face of modernity, asking the question, what happens when a city leaves its folklore behind? And then it shows two armored ninja fighting over the skies of modern-day Shinjuku, transforming into jets and cars, having cool flashy sword fights while the city burns in slow motion. This anime is awesome. And I hate that it hasn't seen much exposure since 2007, but I'm about to change that in the only way I know how, with D&D Homebrew. Cause Karas is a goldmine for an urban campaign that almost literally reinvents the Fae, and I've got just the homebrew that does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Welcome to my wife is the MC. I'm V, and I've been running and designing D&D Homebrew for 10 years. Folks, it's the end of Monster Week, and I'm here to help with the closing ceremonies by showcasing my take on D&D Fae. If you're not familiar, Monster Week is a yearly D&D creator event organized by Ginny D and Antonio D'Amico's Hat. Now, I'll be the first to admit that Fae lore, specifically D&D Fae, is not my forte. And my homebrew doesn't really touch upon established concepts like the Seelie or Unseelie court. But you know what else is Fae? Yokai, baby! And in this video, we'll explore how this obscure mid-2000s anime makes for a great D&D campaign setting, with today's homebrew, the City of the Forsaken Yokai. But this isn't purely a DM-only book. It also has a bunch of character options for players to sink their teeth into. So if you're watching, I'll be putting parts of the document that coincide with the anime. I'll use this DM screen symbol if it's something DMs can use, and this D20 symbol for players. But don't worry if you're audio only, cause I'll make sure to catch you up to speed between sections. So, is everybody comfy at the table? Let's take pop culture to pen and paper with today's homebrew, Karas. Karas is set in modern-day Shinjuku. Well, modern as in 2005 modern. It paints the city in grime and neon lights, where people lose themselves to the chaos of consumerism. And hiding in society's peripheral vision are the yokai. Spirits from a parallel plane that rely on the city's collective superstition in order to exist. Do you see where the tension is? In a post-capitalist age where people could barely see past their next paycheck, there's unfortunately no space left for spirituality. And that means the yokai kind as a whole are slowly fading into extinction. But one man sees the injustice in this situation and wants to save the yokai. Through his esoteric knowledge, he's found a perfect solution. By merging them with technology. Echo is the main antagonist of Karas. He's a former spirit guardian of Shinjuku who saw society's decline as an affront to the city he so loved. So to punish these foolish humans, he created the Mikura. They're a race of cyber yokai who can shift between a human disguise and the mechanical monstrosity of their true forms. And Echo really did save these yokai, because they no longer need belief to stay alive. Instead, they feed on human blood to sustain themselves. And what's cool is that they terrorize humans in a way that harkens back to their folktales, while giving it a modern twist. The Kappa, for example, blends in as a pro wrestler, which is definitely a nod to their love for sumo wrestling. But as a Mikura, it finds victims near sources of water, like a public toilet for example, then sucks them into a whirlpool. Even its Mikura form is very reminiscent of the classical Kappa look, with a turtle-like bulk and a bill. And Karas did this with a lot of other yokai. The Wan Yudo is a flaming wheel that races across Japan's roads and traps people's souls.
And make them your slaves!
In Karas, it's a street racing centaur tank thing with a buzzsaw and a piercer that traps people's souls in vehicles. And sucks their blood. Lore-accurate Kamaitachi is a sickle weasel that cuts up people in a burst of wind. Its Mikura form in Karas, on the other hand, is a robot whirlwind of blades that can transform into a weasel with scythes jutting out of it. Then there's the Tsuchigumo, a female femme fatale spider lady. And in Karas, she's a femme fatale spider lady, but with acid web. And then there's the Nue, with its electric powers. Okay, maybe they take a bit of artistic license, but you get my point. But this right here is how Karas reinvented the Fae for me. Conceptually, I love the idea of taking those old myths and turning them into these mechanical beings. Narratively, there's a twisted irony in the Mikura's existence. The modernization that resulted in the abandonment of yokai was turned into a tool to punish humans. The Mikura also puts the yokai in a very interesting conundrum. With them terrorizing the humans, maybe they'll finally start believing in yokai again. But what a lot of the yokai don't realize is that Echo's plan involves sacrificing a lot of humans. Like a biblical amount of humans. So what can they do to survive if there are even fewer humans to believe in them? Echo certainly has a mechanical solution. So if Echo isn't stopped, cyberization might be the only alternative to succumbing to entropy. This more or less sets up the central conflict of Karas, where the survival of a hidden world is contingent on the actions of the ignorant masses or a magical megalomaniac. And this premise actually covers quite a bit of the homebrew. Chapter 1 covers the tools to create your own yokai Shinjuku and the rules to manage stuff like how the yokai interact with the material plane. The Mikura themselves also cover a good chunk of chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 has a lot of cool cyber yokai inspired stat blocks like the Kappa and the Tsuchigumo. Meanwhile, Chapter 4 gives players a lot of options like backgrounds, species, and feats to play as either a yokai or a Mikura. But these are just the broad strokes of the setting. So let's talk about factions. Karas uses multiple perspectives to give Shinjuku its own character, but it also looks at the conflict from different angles. What I didn't mention in the previous part is that the city has a literal soul called a Yurine. These catgirls are manifestations of the city's will, and it's portrayed through a vague yet evocative lens. Think of them as avatars of the city's spirit, and they're the ones who oversee the city's survival for both the humans and the yokai. So this puts them in an interesting situation, where they have to weigh the lives of the yokai versus the future of the city. And while Echo's solution is certainly a future, it's still a future paved with blood. But that doesn't mean the Yurine will sit idly by while a pro wrestler Kappa sucks up a bunch of civilians. No, she employs the titular Karas to protect the citizens. Karas are like spiritual enforcers who serve the Yurine, and they are the absolute coolest tokusatsu coded heroes in anime. They're high-speed armored ninja who can transform into cars, jets, tanks, and umbrellas. And they're basically undead warlocks who pacted with the city. And serving under the Yurine as a Karas is a playable faction that players can join, complete with renown rewards, special equipment, and special feats. The Karas occupy the space between the yokai, Echo, and the humans. Shinjuku's future isn't as simple as taking out Echo, since that would mean dooming the yokai. So they're caught in an ideological deadlock, trying to find an answer that will determine the city's future while having supersonic fights with robot spider mommies. Speaking of robot spider mommies, they're also a playable faction. I've already discussed Echo's faction at length, but they've got the full kit of progression and rewards as well. Now, I know I've spoken a lot about the supernatural side of Shinjuku, but there's also a third faction at play, one that makes for a very different style of campaign. While the cyber yokai and transformer ninjas wage war, the local police force is still the ones who have to make sense of it all. Adventures in this faction resemble a supernatural noir thriller, as players investigate mysterious disappearances and inexplicable murders. And stuff gets weirder the closer the players get to the truth. The character options for the law enforcement aren't as expansive as the Karas or the Mikura factions, but they do have expanded firearm rules in Chapter 5. By the way, I don't know how to connect this to other stuff, but I made a cell phone magic item.
This is a cell phone!
It took quite a bit of time to design it, but I'm really proud of it, so I hope you like it.
I threw it on the ground!
I know I didn't talk about the titular Karas much, but this is Fae Week, and the Karas is kind of a different beast. So you better subscribe, because I'm gonna show you a Karas themed warlock subclass in 2 weeks. But in the meantime, Remember to get your copy of the City of the Forsaken Yokai Homebrew via the links in the description. It has a free light version if you want to check it out before purchase, and if you want to get our entire catalog for free, consider becoming a Ko-Fi or Patreon member. Membership also gives you access to some member-exclusive homebrew like Jinusang, and of course you get a spot in our exclusive Discord server. By the way, did you know that there's a better version of the Artificer? I talk all about it right here. But before you go, let's welcome MC to give a shout out to our beloved Mallard members.
Hello, it's me, MC, the Mallard Quinn, and I'm here to give a special shout out to these Mallard Royal Guards. Karma Prime, William Cozart, Elderlight, Tommy Kamen Rider 88, Mr. Phantom, Gamer Gaming, Storm Starshine, Bryant LW, Coinot 1989, KV, Piku, and Cosplay Battle. So V didn't get much sleep trying to chase the Monster Week deadline, so in case you made it this far, know that we really appreciate you. Karas holds a very special place in our hearts, and V really wanted to do it justice. So we hope you like it. Until next time, V and I hope you have a wonderful day ahead.